But we were pretty worn out at the same time. And
the group, formerly known as the Dixie Chicks, now just the Chicks, were once one of the most popular groups in America.
I don't know, I think we needed a break.
But then everything fell apart for them and they disappeared overnight.
I definitely wanted to be very blatant and literal with this one.
And now the truth about what actually happened and how they dealt with it is finally coming out. Now, it's widely known that the Bush administration's choice to enter the Iraq War was at best a mistake and more evidently a shameless money grab for the military. Corporations and politicians profited over the senseless war that was built on misplaced anger and blatant lies. It's up there with the Vietnam War in terms of shameful foreign military action. And as these events were unfolding in real time, some people were brave enough to stand up and call out the actions of the Bush administration. At the time, the Chicks were some of the people to try and hold George W. Bush accountable for the senseless war, and it almost permanently cost them their careers. The Chicks were performing in London on March 10, 2003, while Natalie Maines had some choice words to say to the crowd. Natalie said that they were ashamed the President of the United States is from their home state of Texas. The comments created a massive uproar back home, and it resulted in a cry for the Chicks to be canceled, even if being canceled didn't have that catchy name it does today. America was being split in half by increasingly polarized sides over the Bush administration and the war, and by picking a side, the Dixie Chicks lost all their country music support. The group was promptly blacklisted and labeled as unpatriotic traitors, even though there's nothing more patriotic than exercising your freedom of speech. It quickly escalated to the point where country music radio stations refused to play their songs, and fans were even encouraged to burn their albums. One of the biggest bands in America was suddenly completely rejected by their massive audience overnight. The band lasted for more than a decade. Apparently, country music fans don't forget in a hurry. Then, on September 4th, 2019, things took a turn. KWJJ, a country music station in Portland, Oregon, played Taylor Swift's song Soon You'll Get Better. It's a track that features the Chicks. Mike Chase, a host of the station, revealed some of the feedback they received in a Facebook post after. The reaction was extremely divisive. Even though it's a song about a mother struggling with cancer, which shouldn't be at all controversial, the station immediately got replies that people didn't appreciate Taylor Swift ramming her politics down their throats. Even though the Chicks took a big hit after their decision to get political, they experienced a much-deserved resurgence in the mid-2010s. They sold out a 53-state tour in 2016, and since the demand was there, they decided to give all their patient fans something else. They announced their first new album in roughly 13 years, 2019's The Long Way. Critics hailed their return, and the Chicks took home the Grammy for Album of the Year. But the Chicks once again found themselves at the center of a controversy. Only this time, it wasn't about decisions a political leader made. They were in hot water for the name they gave their band. When the Dixie Chicks initially signed to Sony back in 1995, the label was concerned that their name was politically incorrect. But they were more worried about the term Chicks as opposed to Dixie. Dixie being a reference to the former Confederate states in the Civil War. Natalie Maines, Emily Stryer, and Marty McGuire all were adamant about the name, and they went on to become a huge world-famous group. Their Chicks Rule slogan became an empowering motto for women, but the use of Dixie in their name gave right-wing listeners the idea that they leaned that way politically. Those listeners learned that wasn't the case in 2003. Still, their name was a reference to politics they didn't align themselves with. So, as time went on, it seemed like an outdated decision just to sound cool, especially since they learned the hard way the kind of crowd that name attracts. When the George Floyd protests happened in 2020, there was a title shift in America. Confederate status were being pulled down around the country, and groups like Lady Antebellum changed their name to Lady A, since antebellum was another way to speak fondly about the Confederate South. It seemed like all eyes were on the Dixie Chicks to do the same, and criticisms around them grew increasingly loud. Then, the Dixie Chicks stunned the world once again. They put out a new song called March March, but they put it out as a new band name. Now they were simply the Chicks. The only explanation they provided for fans was that they wanted to meet this moment. According to their banjo player, Emily, the change was long overdue. The band had started feeling uncomfortable about the name while touring in 2016, mostly because of racist rhetoric surrounding Donald Trump. Emily said that while current events were a tipping point in the decision, they had all been considering this change for years. Once again, the Chicks' decision to get political sparked another wave of outrage almost 20 years later. Some commenters said they were virtue signaling, a term that didn't exist back in 2003. And Texas Republican Senator Ted Cruz accused them of telling the entire South to get lost. Emily didn't dignify Ted Cruz's outburst with a reply. She just said that nobody was trying to virtue signal and they were just following their own personal moral compass. They also figured this was just the same people who had already been hating them since the Bush administration and who never stopped hating them and were just looking for a new excuse to be angry. Still, even if they hadn't been canceled in 2003, the Chicks admit that they only felt like they had maybe one more album in them after 2003. They felt used by the industry and all the people who were eager to make money off them. They were run ragged and had even sued Sony for systemic thievery in 2002 over what was alleged underpayment. They needed a break. And in a weird way, getting canceled gave them the necessary time away from the spotlight to slowly rediscover why they love making music. They still know the music business isn't fair and artists are still getting stolen from by labels. But at least they're going in with both eyes open and a little wiser about the process. Their latest album, Gaslighter, which was revealed in July 2020, deals with complex adult themes that reflect who they've grown up to become, as well as the struggles they had to endure along the way. And they're still political and not afraid to share their feelings on another polarizing president, Donald Trump, someone they seemingly aren't huge fans of. Nowadays, the kind of criticism the Chicks had in 2003 for the then president feels tame compared to a larger landscape, especially in country music. America has never been more divided, and artists make whole careers out of fanning the flames of outrage by saying negative things about another political party. The Chicks realize it could cost them fans, but other shady artists have used that lesson to actually sell records. One thing is for sure, no matter what happens to them, the Chicks will always be true to who they are. And they're not afraid to say what's on their mind, because if you don't agree, then they don't really want you as a fan in the first place. But anyway, what do you guys think about all this? Was it fair that the Chicks got canceled? Should the Chicks have changed their name? And what's your favorite song by the Chicks? Let me know in the comments below.